Well, I've got another update for you guys. So there was a dev blog last night. Of course, it was like midnight, so I was asleep. I just now woke up, and it's time to get on it and try to give you guys what's going on. So they had an update. They were talking about a lot of things. Their main focus was to tell you guys why they're doing what they're doing and some future things they're looking at doing to fix things like moderation, transparency, and a lot of different things. I'm about to go through it in a second. But I also have one other thing, which was an unofficial patch note. So in this update, they were like, oh, we're going to try to communicate these changes. We didn't communicate all the changes. It wasn't intentional. And then they listed some changes, but those are not all the changes, okay? Those are not all the changes. And there was someone who made in the forums an unofficial patch notes, and they have most of the secret changes. And there might be some things we don't even have in there. So I'm going to go through both these things. First, we're going to go through the dev blog, and I'll link that in the description in case you want to read it word for word. I read the entire thing word for word, and I'm going to try to, give it all to you kind of summarized here, save you some time. And then we're going to go through these patch notes, these unofficial ones, and we're going to look at those too. Okay, so I'm going to read the first paragraph because, I don't know, I should, and after that I'll start summarizing because I've already read everything. So this is Trevzer FTW. Thank you for your feedback and questions since our third edition of Update on Current Issues dev blog. We continue collecting your feedback and questions to find trends of active issues our community are interested in learning more about. We appreciate everyone's interest into our communication and where we're going with the New World, and we want to continue being transparent and communicative on how we plan to reach our goals and address outstanding issues. Okay, so stability and performance in-game, they broke the game with the Void Gauntlet update, and it made wars like slideshows, and the problem they had was it introduced a problem with status effects, which I saw some people, they were suspicious of this, and they were right. Where the status effects are using approximately 10 times the amount of bandwidth that they're supposed to use, resulting in performance issues when multiple status effects, and this is not just Void Gauntlet effects, this is healer effects, this is mage effects, everything, are fired off. This obviously impacts wars and invasions, any group things, people using status effect weapons. They've isolated the issue, and they're confident they'll have a fixed release to players once it has been thoroughly tested. So my guess would be that this patch for this might be a hot fix that comes out sooner rather than later. I doubt they'll wait till Wednesday, but we'll see. I have a feeling, though, it'll be like Sunday night. Okay, downtime, guys. We're going to fix this crap. So another thing, though, that was really interesting here, a little insight into what might be going on in the back end as to them as a game studio. They said, not catching this prior to release was a mistake on our part. And here we go. And a net result of trying to go too fast. Now, normally, and this is just speculation. I'm just going to say right now it's a speculation. But when I see something like that, it makes me want to think that someone in a higher up position, a manager or, a senior, whatever person who's in charge of almost the whole project was like, we have a deadline. This needs to come out by this time. And everyone else was scrambling to get it done by that time. So they were trying to go too fast because of that. That's my guess. I think that's some cool insight potentially there. And then going forward, we're going to strive to improve the quality of our releases. More details on release timings will be made available as soon as we have validated the fix internally. Okay. So lack of transparency on penalties and appeals. Now this one might be really interesting to some of you guys who got banned or temporarily suspended with not real clear messaging on what in the world happened. So understand the messaging received when an account has had a penalty applied can be difficult. We've realized that the categories are too broad and may not provide enough information to players as to what they did that triggered the penalty. They're going to try to address this. They're publishing support articles, which is meh. I don't know about that one. And then they'll provide insight into penalties, duration, and appeal process, and they're looking at the appeal process. They want to provide more timely and better communication about the appeal, when the appeal was received, what time is expected for the reply. They're going to try to do better about that. And then finally, they're revamping the penalty messaging system in games. So hopefully it'll give you more information about why you got banned, not just banned. Reason, ban, you know what I mean? And then moderation both in-game and in community spaces like the forums. So I'm just going to read this part right here. Regardless of where you're participating, whether it's in-game or through our community spaces like the forums or the Discord, we heavily enforce our code of conduct to ensure a positive and constructive environment. We want everyone to feel comfortable participating in Tournament and online. We hear the feedback about the inconsistency of penalties applied to a player's account and are implementing processes to address this issue. So they want you to keep reporting people who are doing things that are not okay, and then they're saying it's possible mistakes were made. Some unsavory actors maybe slipped through the cracks. And then some people get flagged erroneously when they shouldn't have, and they say they'll take corrective action, which is not always the case, I think, but they are trying, they feel like. And then we have some items they're looking into to make it more transparent. Trying to find mechanisms to make it more transparent. In-game communication system for warnings or suspensions. Communicate if a report you submitted was actioned on. So when you report people, maybe you get on one day and it was like, thanks for reporting. It led to a ban or whatever. And then they're also working on a few support articles, blah, blah, blah. Then we got learnings from the PTR. So this is something that a lot of people might want to know about. So basically, they appreciate the feedback. Moving forward, they want to, basically what this whole thing was saying was, we do hear you. Sorry if it didn't seem like we hear you, and we're taking everything into account, but it's not always easy to immediately change things, and some things take time, and some things they just want to let it play out a little bit longer before making a decision. They're constantly monitoring and adjusting, and other changes just need additional time. And then when it comes to weapon balance, let's see, what was this one? Let's see, the weapon balance will always be in the flux, and they're going to continue listening, observing, and adjusting accordingly. And there's going to be more balance patches coming, by the way, so this is kind of interesting. In our upcoming releases, you can expect to see more changes that reflect the feedback we received from you, our community. We will continue to seek out opportunities for you to provide early patch feedback and help shape the future of New World. And then this thing with undocumented changes and updates. So a lot of people are mad that there's random changes that just were not in the patch notes. And they said, we are sorry that a number of undocumented changes made the 1.1 Into the Void update. This update includes many changes the team made months ago before we branched our launch build. This long time frame and the size of the patch led to a number of changes that we missed in the release notes. This was not intentional, and we are working to improve our processes to ensure more accurate release notes in the future. Below is a list of the main changes that were either unintentional or not documented. Now, this is not all the changes. That's where I'm going to go to the unofficial patch notes. We're going to look at that. So, the decreased loot quality and amount from elite chests. Now, this is probably one of the biggest news articles of the day in this video. This is an unintentional bug. So, this was not intended for the quality of elite chests to get changed. It was introduced to 1.1 patch, and they are investigating this issue and working on a fix, and will release it as soon as it's ready. So, yes, the elite chest nerf was not an intentional feature, just so you guys know. The removed horticulture gear, I went over this in a previous video. It was unintentional change. They accidentally flagged it as future content was removed from the game, and they're going to reimburse you guys. So they're going to reimburse by giving gear back, and they talk about more in a second. And then the remove double luck from Weaver's Knot. Some of you guys I know are familiar with it. People in my Discord have said things about this. This was an unintentional change, and we missed it in the patch notes. No item should have double luck or double of any perk. And then they also did a tuning pass on a number of equipment shortly after release that have just recently made their way into the game, and that's why a lot of things have changed, like what perks do what. That's why sometimes lucks turn to keen and various changes. And we understand that this has disrupted some of your carefully tuned character builds. In the future, we'll be more discerning and forthcoming about any changes we made here. Okay, and then elite point of interest difficulty tuning. So a number of point of interests were increased in difficulty. Now, this one you guys are definitely going to know about because there's a little bit more to it. It's not just as it appears on the server, okay? There's apparently some stuff that's not intended. We increased the number of bosses, increased the number of enemies, increased the level of some enemies, and adjusted the placement of some elite chests. These were intentional changes that we missed in the patch notes. We wanted to increase the challenge of these endgame areas. As a part of this tuning pass, we also adjusted some paths that allow players to attack enemies from safe areas. No more, none of that. As a part of the tuning pass, we made the named enemies in Eben Scale Reach had their difficulty incorrectly increased too much. So those Eben Scale Reach enemies that are just invincible, that was not intended. And they'll be toning them down in a future patch, hopefully Wednesday. The Darkness Membranes in Great Cleave and Morningdale also had their difficulty incorrectly increased, resulting in enormous HP values, and we'll be adjusting them down in a future patch also. So if you guys are familiar with that, those insane HP values, not intended, at least when you're in small groups. All right, so here's another humongous one. If you're subscribed to this YouTube and you've kept up with all this moat and elemental quintessence nonsense, they removed the elemental quintessences as a reward from gathering elemental creatures. This was intentional. So guys, quintessence drops are never coming back. Now, as for the moats, we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know if they want them to drop moats or if they're just going to remove moats. We have no idea yet. This was an intentional change that we made as a result of the number of these enemies and their spawn rates being much higher than we originally designed the rewards for the creature. Our goal was to create better balance between these creatures and elemental stones and plants as sources of moats. Okay, so actually come to think of it, we do know apparently right here, they'll probably drop moats then, or something like that. But they do not want to drop hundreds, apparently. That's why they turned them off. So expect them to drop either 1 to 5 or 10 to 20 or something like that. Okay, so they reduced the amount of wildwood required to make glittering ebony, and this was intentional to get it in line with other epic materials like Asmodean Phoenix Weave, where they just use 1 and 1. If you guys aren't familiar, glittering ebony used, I think it was 2 or more of wildwood compared to the barbed vine, and it made barbed vine worthless and wildwood worth a fortune. So player-to-player trading is now possible in expeditions. This was an intentional quality of life update. Players can now see, I don't know if you guys even knew this. I didn't even know they'd done this. Players can now see which trophies they have equipped from their bio screen. This is an intentional quality of life change. So if you guys aren't familiar with that, check that out. That's pretty cool. And then they replaced Everfallwell and Morningdale statue with a fountain. This was an intentional change that was made in preparation for an upcoming player event. I'm assuming, you know, holiday stuff. So we'll see about that. Crafting trade skill. Now this one's kind of a troll. I'm just gonna tell you right now, this one's kind of a troll. So they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna talk about crafting and all this, and you know, we made these crafting changes. They don't even talk about it. They don't even talk about it in here. They're just saying crafting lets you make the most powerful items, and it is important. And we want the things at the cap to be able to be used, whatever. Like, we also like that some things are just for folks who are capable of making them. And as we continue development, we look for opportunities throughout the range of trade skill levels and endgame. Like, they still haven't even talked about those crafting changes, guys. They're like, they did tell us in the patch notes that they adjusted XP, but then they have nothing to really say about it. So that's just final. That's how it's gonna be. Although they're gonna fix jewel crafting. If you saw my other video, jewel crafting is going to get tuned a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to level because they made it twice as hard, and they said that wasn't intended, which I don't know if it was or wasn't, but either way, they're gonna change it. So they have a stance on add-ons. This is specifically the mini-map would be my guess is what they're looking at. So they want it to be simple. It should not provide any advantage over a player using the regular game client. That means an add-on can reorganize or present the information normally displayed in a different way, or provide information that normally would require a different UI view to achieve. The idea with the map add-ons is they fall under the latter category. We of course have an in-game map, and all they should be doing is displaying that map in a different way. It's okay for the map to have a different artistic style as long as it's the equivalent information to the in-game. We are working to see if we can establish a simple and secure way to publish data for add-on use. This would allow them to add functionality not currently available. So what this really means, if you guys aren't familiar, Overwolf it was this obnoxious thing. I've made multiple videos about this, and finally their last update on it was basically, in layman's terms, having Overwolf will not get you banned. Meanwhile, if you have an add-on like Overwolf that does any of these things, it will get you banned. Oh, by the way, Overwolf does all these things. So it was like, what the hell? What? So basically, if you use Overwolf, by the rules they set, even though they can't track it probably, by the rules they set out, you have to turn off everything on the Overwolf thing except for your location on the map, because you aren't allowed to see resource nodes that wouldn't be appearing on the compass. And so if you have, even though it's pulling from some map or has its own map and it just tells you the location where they would be, that was against what their terms of service according to them. So it didn't make any sense. But what's really interesting is if they go through with this, then we may see Overwolf eventually be able to have an add-on where it basically just shows your compass on the map, whatever you can see. So once you're close enough for an herb to appear, it appears on your mini-map, and just like the compass, but on your mini-map. Now, that'd be pretty cool. And at that point, Overwolf would be a great thing to use, and you'd be in line with the terms of service and have some nice features. So that's something to look forward to in the future. It's interesting. Gold selling players plus bots. They're banning bots. They're banning bots. They're banning gold sellers. And reports of gold sellers are down 70%, which I agree with. I see significantly less gold seller spam in my server. It's just, it's looking good for that. They're doing a good job with that, in my opinion. So how do housing points work? If you guys aren't familiar, it's actually something pretty simple. It's based on the decorations in your home combined with how much territory standing you got during the pay period. So if you want to be the #1 house, you have to go do the job board as often as you can. That is the way to get #1 house. And that is why 1 week you can have the #1 house and the next week someone else can have it, even though your decorations are better, because decorations are only one part of the equation. It's all about territory standing, how much territory standing you got during the pay period. So there you guys go. If you want to be #1 house, now you know how to do it if you weren't familiar with that. Okay, Harvester gear set. They got rid of it. They're going to give them back. The gear score, so here, let me see. Any player who had ever earned a single piece of this gear will be rewarded with a full set of Bind on Equip horticulture gear at the highest tier that was ever earned. The gear score for the replacement gear will be at the highest limit allowed per tier. This includes all horticulture gear earned, whether you received it as a loot drop, it was traded to you, or purchased from the trading post. The items will be distributed directly to players and show up as an armor chest that will deliver the full set of gear. So I already read that in a different video, but in case you didn't see that video, that's what's going to go on with that. So good news on that if you lost your gear. Lost housing compensation. October 28th, we addressed an issue where player lost their houses. They're going to try to give the houses back, or they already did. And if you got a new house and you have 3 houses, so they can't give you your house back, then they're going to compensate how much you paid for the house, apparently. This has been addressed in the November monthly release. So apparently that went out. I did not get affected by that, so I had no idea. But if you did, maybe you just suddenly have money or suddenly have your house. So I might want to go check on that. And then thank you for reading our 3rd edition of Updates on Current Issues. We appreciate your continued support while we strive to make Eternum your in-game home. We're going to go take a bit of a holiday break, but we'll see you next week. Now, that kind of freaks me out. They might not have a patch Wednesday. Uh-oh. We'll have to deal with this stuff till next Wednesday. We'll see, though. We'll see. There's no guarantee. Unofficial patch notes. Top secret. So this was some guy posted this. He was using a lot of different sources. There was a Reddit post, too. And I'm going to go through this real fast and just read off all these changes. So the well and the fountain got changed, which they said another thing. Let's see. They increased the difficulty of some high-level elites. That was kind of mentioned. High number of players in an area will now make the bosses even harder and loots worse, which they did not mention. Decreased, and I've already gone this. Some of this I've gone over in yesterday's video, by the way. But if you haven't seen it, I'm just going to go through all this just in case, because a lot of people who watch this haven't seen the other one, okay? Decreased loot quality and quantity from elite chests, which is a bug, they just said. Reduced armor pieces loot probability, which they kind of hinted at as a bug. Changed some young tree models outside of Everfall into mature tree, kind of funny. Adjusted some paths that were allowing players to skip high-level mobs to access elite bosses. Decreased spawn rate of some mobs that could be exploited for resources, which kind of mentioned the other one. Territory influence will now be blocked when there's an upcoming invasion. They didn't say anything about that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Changed territory reward scaling and shuffle system. Not 100% sure on that one. And then bow, removed possibility to cancel the animation of penetrating shot. Musket, decreased the time needed to reload by about 10%. Fire staff, removed the possibility to dash, cancel the start of a flamethrower. And then also moved the down luck perks from several weapons, making it only available on legendary version, which I don't think they said they fixed that one item, but there's a lot more. If you guys will know what I'm talking about if you have one of these. So a lot of luck weapons just don't have them, and weird stuff's going on with that. This they said they changed Weaver's Knot. Removed hood from all robe chest pieces. That's an interesting change. I didn't even notice that. Trade skills and gathering. Reduced the number of required high-level components on some recipes. The 300 stat perks that allowed players to one-shot resource nodes can no longer be triggered after the first hit by canceling gathering. Added legendary resources that were needed to craft some recipes to the loot table, which they kind of said, but they didn't say all. So ice crystal cores, fire crystal cores, all those items, most of those items are in the game now. Here's a change. I noticed this too, that they changed. Crafting voiding, it now requires 200 smelting. If you guys didn't know, it was 0 smelting before. So now you got to get your smelting up if you want to give someone void ingots in order to make your void armor. Or you have to give them void ore and a bunch of other stuff and have them make it for you. Fixed a lot of wrong descriptions of potion, food, armor, weapons. Removed. Oh, here's a big one. Here's a big one. If you guys have noticed, runic leather and scar and smolder have been acting kind of weird in the market, and it's because of this. I haven't tested it myself though, so maybe this is wrong, but I bet it's probably right. Removed legendary hides from strange boars loot table. So that's those boars that everyone's been farming all the time, guys. And in my videos, I showed you an insane spot up in the swamps of Eden Grove to do it. I actually have 2 different spots. So I'm going to have to find you guys a new legendary hide farm. So look forward to that. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you want to get that, because I'm going to be looking into adding one of those in the next like 2 or 3 days of a different way to get legendary hides, because I've got a lot of places in mind that I just have to go test and actually troubleshoot and make sure they're practical. But there are alternatives. Don't worry. I will get you guys some alternatives. Don't worry about that. Elemental monsters now drop simple motes, which, yeah, we already know about that. And they adjusted some ore placement. So there's some additional notes for you guys. There's a lot of changes, and I guarantee that there's more. Also, I got kicked for AFK. All right, so that's the news with 1.1. That's what's going on right now. I have more videos coming out later today about a lot of different things, different money opportunities and a lot of stuff. So make sure you subscribe to that if that sounds interesting. I always post news, a lot of different things, build guides, gold guides, lots of helpful information. I try to post every day. Lately, I've been posting 2 to 3 times a day. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to subscribe for that. But that is it with the New World dev blog update. That is what's going on. That's what to expect in the near future. It also looks like they're taking a little break for the holidays, so I don't know how it's going to affect their patch cycles. But now you guys have a better idea what's going on. You don't have to go search for all that information yourself. And again, I linked the stuff in the description if you want to go read it word for word by yourself. But that's the situation. Now you know what's going on now and in the future for New World.